My name is Riley Morgan. I'm 31 now, and 5 years ago, I packed up my life in Seattle and never looked back. Back then, I was a back-end developer working for a cybersecurity company that handled high-stakes accounts, major banks, government agencies, the kind of clients who don't tolerate failure. I wasn't just another coder in the system. I was the person who tackled problems others couldn't even articulate. I was the fixer they called when everyone else had failed. But outside the blinking servers and polished code, I was a ghost, especially to my own family. We hadn't spoken since 2016. So when my phone buzzed on a chilly Wednesday night in October 2023, and I saw my cousin Jessica's name flash across the screen, my stomach flipped. She was the only one who even had my updated number. "Riley," she said in that familiar, careful voice, "your parents have been trying to reach you. They want you to come home for Christmas." I sank onto the edge of my Brooklyn apartment bed, the springs creaking under the silence that followed. Now I asked. After all this time, Jessica's voice was hesitant. "They've been asking around. They seem sincere." I didn't respond right away. I just stared at the wall, the paint chipped from years of wear. I hadn't thought about them in forever, but in an instant the memories came crashing down. I was always the misfit, the one nobody chose. I remembered the worn vinyl seat in Dr. Reynolds' office when I was 13. My knees tucked to my chest while he explained plainly, "Riley's behavior doesn't come from isolation. It's a reaction to being ignored." My mother scoffed and waved him off. "We love both our kids the same, but I knew better." My older brother Jake was the golden child, athletic, popular, the charming quarterback who could do no wrong. On his 16th birthday, he got a brand new car with a red bow on top. I got a second-hand hoodie that still smelled faintly like mothballs. At Christmas, his gifts lit up like the Rockefeller tree. Mine just wrapped obligations if they remembered at all. But this year, they wanted me back. They had no idea who I'd become. Family holidays had always been minefields. Jake would command the room like a celebrity at a reunion, while I faded into the furniture. But that's when I found my escape coding. It all started with a crumpled flyer taped to the school bulletin board: Intro to Computer Science Club, room 108, Thursdays. I showed up once and that was it. I never missed another meeting. For the first time, something made sense. The logic, the structure, it saw me when no one else did. That club became my sanctuary. We scavenged old computer parts, built Frankenstein machines from scrap, swapped programming books like currency, and stayed after school debugging each other's projects. I even built my first simple game on a battered loaner laptop. Mr. Bennett, our advisor, noticed me right away. One afternoon, he pulled me aside. "You've got something rare, Riley. Don't let the world convince you you're small." At 17, I knew what I had to do. I applied to colleges out of state, far out. I was going to start over. Jake, meanwhile, had already settled into an elite California university tuition paid in full by our parents. I'll never forget that Thanksgiving. My dad raised his wine glass and declared, "To Jake, making us proud at Stanford." Cheers erupted. My mom added, "And Riley, well, we're helping her look for a steady job." My Uncle Roger chuckled, "We're hiring dishwashers at the diner." The room burst into laughter, including my parents. I stayed quiet. What they didn't know was that I'd already been accepted into a top-tier tech program in New York with a full scholarship, tuition, housing, even a monthly stipend. I packed in silence and moved to Manhattan. I waitressed on the side, graduated at the top of my class, and signed a contract with a cybersecurity firm before the ink dried on my degree. 4 years in, I led a major integration project for a global bank. The bonus I earned was enough to buy a condo. I contacted a realtor. Within a week, I closed on a stunning 2-bedroom in Fort Greene, exposed brick, a sleek, modern kitchen close to the park. At 31, I held the keys to a home that was entirely mine. 2 weeks before Christmas, I hosted a housewarming. It wasn't lavish, just take-out mismatched wine glasses, laughter, and friends who'd seen me through the darkest nights. Hannah raised her glass, grinning. To Riley, the one who turned silence into strength. We toasted, and I smiled. But in the back of my mind, I was already preparing. In a week, I'd be back in the house where I once felt invisible. But this time, I wasn't that lost girl. This time, I was walking in with a spine made of steel. A week before Christmas, I took some time off work, wrapped the gifts I'd carefully chosen, and drove the 6-hour stretch back to North Seattle. My childhood neighborhood looked smaller, the house even more tired. Cracked siding, crooked shutters, and a porch light flickering like it couldn't decide whether to live or die. I rang the bell. Footsteps, then the door creaked open. Riley. My mom blinked like I was a ghost. She gave me a quick, awkward hug. You look different. Come in. The smell hit me stale airwood polish and that ever-present bowl of old potpourri. The living room was crowded. Conversations halted, eyes turned. Well, look who finally made it, someone muttered. Is she in sweatpants, another whispered? I glanced down tailored black slacks and a designer coat. Quiet luxury, but clearly wasted here. Jake strolled in with his usual swagger. Everyone, this is Amber, my wife, he said, beaming, and this he patted her rounded belly. Is your future niece or nephew? Congratulations, I said coolly. He smirked. Still living in a closet somewhere, laughter followed. My jaw tightened. I work in tech, I said simply. If you've ever come home more powerful than they expected, hit subscribe, because what comes next? That's when everything changed. Tech, huh? Jake snorted. You still fixing printers and resetting passwords? He turned to Amber. Riley was always the odd one, probably coding in some damp basement. I just smiled faintly, something like that. Mom clapped her hands. Dinner soon. Riley, put your things down. Oh, and Jake's using your old room as his office now. You'll be on the couch. Of course, always the couch. That night dripped with condescension. Aunt Karen cornered me by the tepid punch bowl. Jake's starting a business. He's such a visionary. And you're still with computers. I design software, I said. She squinted like I'd spoken another language. Well, someone has to do the boring jobs. Uncle Roger leaned in over the cluttered kitchen counter while a saucepan sputtered behind him, his voice dipped in a half-joking, half-serious tone. Still got that dishwasher position open at the diner, he said, wiping his hands on a ragged towel. Pays minimum wage, but hey, it's honest work. I smiled politely, my voice steady. Thanks, but I'm doing all right. They never asked what that meant, never looked beyond the labels they'd assigned me years ago. At dinner, they seated me near the swinging kitchen door, as if the hum of the dishwasher and clatter of pans were appropriate companions for someone they'd never truly welcomed. Jake predictably held court from the center, gesturing grandly with his fork as he declared, "This idea is going to disrupt everything." He leaned back the room, hanging on his words. We just need the initial capital. How much are we talking? Dad asked, chin in hand, trying to sound practical. 200 grand, Jake said, with the breezy confidence of someone who's never been told no. I nearly choked on my water. It was every hollow startup pitch I'd seen crash and burn, big promises, no plan. But Mom just reached over and patted his hand. We'll figure something out. Family helps family. After dinner, Mom handed me a thin blanket with a well-practiced smile and gestured toward the couch. It was familiar, unspoken, unkind, and expected. Christmas morning broke with Jake and Amber charging downstairs like gleeful children, tearing into the mountain of presents that had appeared overnight. They unwrapped the gifts I'd brought: designer scarves, high-end skincare, a leather tote. Riley. These are gorgeous, Mom said, lifting her new bag with awe. Then it came to my turn, or rather it didn't. Oh no, Mom gasped too loudly to sound genuine. We completely forgot. Jake laughed loud and sharp. Just like when we were kids, don't cry this time, he added with a smug grin. You're an adult now. Something inside me hardened, not with anger or sadness, but with finality. I'm not going to cry, I said, my voice like polished glass. I reached into my purse and pulled out my keychain. The brushed steel caught the morning light as I held it up. Mom's brow furrowed. What's that? Keys, I said simply, to my new apartment. Closed on it last week. The room fell into a stunned silence, the kind that hangs like smoke in the air. Dad blinked. You bought an apartment with your salary? From my job, I said with calm precision. My company just licensed a cybersecurity framework I developed to an international bank. My share was decent. Mom's eyes narrowed with curiosity sharpened by envy. How decent? I gave a small shrug. About $150,000, after taxes. A fork clattered to a plate. Jake stared mouth ajar. Amber's expression morphed from disinterest to alarm. My parents looked at me like I'd revealed I'd been moonlighting as a spy. 150,000, Mom echoed, the pitch of her voice rising. What kind of job pays like that? I told you, I said, still serene. I'm a software developer. I build enterprise-level security systems for Fortune 500 companies. Dad leaned closer, suddenly attentive. How long have you been making that kind of money? Since I graduated, I replied. The bonuses fluctuate, but my base salary's been 6 figures for a while. That was the moment everything shifted. Mom's demeanor flipped like a switch. She stood abruptly, the sweetness in her voice now cloying. Sweetheart, why didn't you tell us? We're just so proud of you. Dad nodded enthusiastically. Jake, did you hear that your sister works with Fortune 500 companies? Jake's jaw tightened. Amber leaned in, whispering something that made his eyes narrow. Mom scooted next to me on the couch. So tell us more about this apartment. How many bedrooms? 2 beds, 2 baths. Fort Greene. It's close to the office, I said evenly. She clasped her hands. We should visit sometime. Family should stay connected. I nearly laughed. Family. After 8 years of silence and snubs, I stood brushing invisible lint off my coat. Actually, I've got a long drive ahead. Mom reached out. But you just got here. Dad nodded. We haven't even talked about your career. As I packed my bag upstairs, their voices rose and fell in frantic murmurs. When I returned, suitcase in hand, they were assembled like a panel, smiling too hard, too wide. Before you go, Dad began stepping forward. We wanted to talk about Jake's business opportunity. He mentioned he needs some capital to get started, Mom added. Jake flashed a grin as if bestowing a gift. It's a solid investment. You'd be in early. How much are you asking? I said, my tone flat. Just $200,000, Jake said, as though it were pocket change. With what you make, it's really nothing. I looked at them, my parents who once scoffed when Uncle Roger offered me a minimum wage job, my brother who spent decades belittling me, his wife, who had laughed at me only yesterday. No, I said simply. The smiles collapsed. What do you mean, no, Mom snapped. I mean, I'm not giving you any money. Dad stepped forward, but we're family. I crossed my arms. Where was family when I had to find my own apartment the day after graduation? When you paid for Jake's education and left me to fend for myself, Mom flushed. That was different. We didn't have money back then. You had it for Jake, I said. Jake showed promise, she snapped, then caught herself. I mean, we thought a job would be more secure for you. I grabbed my bag. I need to go. Jake stood, voice rising. You selfish brat, after everything this family did for you? What did you do? I asked, my voice rising now. Feed me, clothe me, that's parenting, not charity. And you made damn sure I knew I was unwanted. I walked to the door as they followed, their protests fading under the weight of my resolve. You'll regret this, Mom called after me. I won't, I replied, stepping into the cold. By the time I hit the interstate, my phone was lighting up calls, texts, guilt-stained pleas. I pulled over at a rest stop and blocked them all. Back in Brooklyn, I poured a glass of red wine, let the city lights spill over my balcony, and exhaled. Brooke messaged me, heard what happened. Sorry. Don't be, I typed. They gave me the best gift, freedom. She sent a laughing emoji. Your mom's telling everyone you're ungrateful. Let her, I replied. That night I slept deeper than I had in years. By morning, the floodgates had opened, texts from relatives I hadn't spoken to in years. Accusations disguised as concern. How could you abandon your family? Jake's trying to build something. We always knew you were selfish. I blocked them one by one, except for Brooke. That afternoon she called. Jesus, Riley, she said. The whole family's in meltdown mode. Your mom told everyone you're rich and refused to help Jake. Good for her, I said dryly. She's telling people you've forgotten where you came from. Of course she is, because admitting I succeeded despite them would be too much. Brooke was quiet for a second. I'm proud of you, for what it's worth. It's worth a lot, I said. You're the only one I care to keep. You really okay cutting everyone else off? I thought for a moment. Brooke. I cut them off 8 years ago. This just made it official. That night, I met Hannah and the others at our usual spot, a cozy wine bar in Fort Greene with cracked leather stools and fairy lights that danced like stars. I told them everything. Good riddance, Hannah said. They sound like poison. Do you think you'll miss them? Someone asked. I stared at my glass. No. I think I've been grieving a family that never really existed. This just made it easier to let go. I raised my glass. To chosen family. To chosen family, they echoed, their smiles warm and true. As we raised our glasses in that dim, warm-lit wine bar in Fort Greene, a buzz vibrated against the wooden table. I glanced down. An unknown number glared back at me. I turned it over, letting it fall silent as laughter and the soft clinking of glassware filled the air around me. 6 months passed. Summer arrived in the city like a balm, draping everything in golden light and lazy mornings. I sat on my balcony with a chipped mug of dark roast, watching the Brooklyn streets stretch awake beneath a blue, forgiving sky. The air was heavy with warmth and freedom, the kind of freedom that's earned, not gifted. It felt like stepping out of a fog I hadn't even known I'd been living in. Brooke still called every week, unprompted, loyal, as always. Jake and Amber had the baby, she told me one Tuesday morning, her voice soft through the speaker. A girl. They named her Sophie. That's nice, I said, and I meant it. I truly hoped that child would be cherished in ways I never was. Brooke shared that Jake and Amber were still living at my parents' house, their grand startup still floating somewhere between fantasy and excuse. Even the family seemed to be growing weary of hearing about what was coming next. According to Brooke, my parents had turned my absence into a well-worn parable, a tale of betrayal and abandonment, where I played the ungrateful villain who vanished despite their supposed sacrifices. They told it often, perhaps because the fiction hurt less than the truth. But while their story repeated like a scratched record at family gatherings, my life had transformed. 3 months after that final Christmas, I met Lucas Hayes in a coffee shop 2 blocks from my office. He was a freelance designer with kind eyes and an almost monastic calm. He asked thoughtful questions, listened without interruption, and understood the unique pain of severing ties with toxic family. He had walked away from his own past, too. We saw each other, not just the curated versions we wore for the world, but the quiet scars and private victories beneath. Professionally, I was thriving. I had just been promoted to lead systems architect for an ambitious AI security integration project. The salary bump was significant, yes, but what excited me most was the creative liberty, the trust to shape something new. My team respected me. My input carried weight. Every late night on a hand-me-down laptop in high school had led to this. About a month ago, Jake managed to find a new number. I was sipping coffee with Lucas barefoot in a soft patch of morning light when the phone rang. "Hey, Riley," Jake said, his voice dripping with manufactured cheer. "Thought we could catch up." I didn't bother with pretense. "What do you want?" He didn't skip a beat. "Sophie should meet her aunt. And things are a bit tight. Mom and Dad's house needs repairs. You don't even know how bad it's gotten." "Doesn't matter," I said. And when he raised his voice, frustrated by my refusal to play along, I hung up, blocked the number, sat back in my chair, and wrapped my fingers around Lucas's hand. Peace hummed in the silence that followed. Everything they said, I'd never have loved security success I had built for myself, brick by brick, line of code by line of code. Brooke told me later they'd turned my old room into a nursery. But it didn't sting. That room had always felt like borrowed space. This home was mine. They kept trying, of course. Distant cousins, old friends of the family, even childhood neighbors. The most ridiculous was Aunt Karen's voicemail, "Family is forever Riley." I shook my head, deleted it, and moved on. I had already walked away. I wasn't turning back. Lucas and I were planning a trip to Japan. We were studying the language together, mapping out shrines and temples, bookmarking ramen spots and tea houses. One evening, Brooke messaged me, "Your mom saw your post. Says it's typical you'd rather vacation than help family." "Good," I texted back. Maybe she's finally starting to get it. Last week, I got promoted again, this time to head of engineering, top 1% salary bracket. My boss shook my hand and said, "You earned this." That night we toasted with friends. Hannah teased, "I bet your mom could feel your bank account tick upward." Lucas popped champagne on our balcony. "Let's buy a house," I said, heart fluttering. "Something with space, a yard, maybe a dog." Just then my phone buzzed. Brooke again. "Your mom says you must be a drug dealer." I laughed, the absurdity of it all. "Let them spin their tales," I told Lucas. "I'm living mine." If you've ever felt like a ghost in your own family, I want you to know this, you're not alone. Leave a comment. Tell me what you walked away from and what peace you built. Your story matters. And maybe hearing mine reminds you that you don't need permission to choose yourself. Build a life that reflects your worth, not the weight of their expectations. If my story struck a chord, a quiet like, or a quick subscribe, helps me share more of these truths with those who might need them.